It's the perfect complement to any summer sporting event. An overpriced drink in one hand and a tray of tortilla chips, jalapenos, and gooey cheese balanced in the other. Saucy and spicy, exotic, yet familiar. But how did nachos become a stadium standard? Americans love their nachos. From preschoolers to presidents, sophomores to seniors. According to expert eater Dan Pashman, it doesn't take much to make a good plate of nachos.
I'm kind of a nacho purist. I think we all know the most important nacho ingredient is cheese. If it's not covered in melted cheese, it's not nachos. Everything else is like window dressing. I think the key is to respect the three basic components: crunch of the chips, cheesy gooiness, and spice. If you have those three things, that's like the holy trinity of nachos. If you have those, whatever else you like is cool with me, as long as it's not interfering with the trinity.
No matter how you top them, you can find a tray of nachos on the menu of almost every sports stadium in America. But why? The answer is buried within the layers of the very first nacho creation.
The story of nachos goes back to 1943 to a guy named Ignacio Anaya. He owned a restaurant in Mexico, and his nickname was Nacho. Back then, it was just a nickname, not a food. So one day, some VIPs come into the restaurant, and Nacho can't find his chef. So he runs into the kitchen, freaks out, starts throwing stuff together. Tortilla chips, cheese, jalapenos, and nachos were born. People loved this new food. They called it Nachos Especiales.
Talk about a great improviser. Eventually, Nachos Especiales made its way across the border into Texas, where a savvy businessman figured out a way to turn this frantically assembled fare into a stadium standard.
Nachos at sporting events got their start with one guy in Texas named Frank Liberto, who's actually nicknamed the father of nachos. Come to think of it, might have been insulting to his actual children.
Papa?
Son?
Anyway, Frank and his family worked in the concessions business. 1976, they decided to sell nachos at Texas Rangers baseball games.
But Frank ran into a problem. Impatient fans. He couldn't get his nachos out fast enough. That's when he came up with an invention that changed the course of human history.
Cheese sauce in a can. Frank could heat it up in his cart, drop it into his pumper, and then crank this stuff out like there was no tomorrow. Oh, look at it go. Yeah. He was like the Henry Ford of nachos. Sprinkle a few jalapenos on, and now he's cranking out the nachos. Look at that. Stadium nachos were created. That first year, they sold $800,000 worth of nachos, 10 times more than what was sold in popcorn. Frank named the nachos after his dad, Rico, called Ricos Nachos. And their family still sells the same cheese sauce in the can to this day.
It may not have been fancy like fondue, but cheese sauce in a can satisfied Frank's hungry fans.
Some people, they get a little bit pretentious. They think that they're better than cheese sauce. Cheese sauce has a place. It's not the same as cheese, it's its own food.
Long story short, nachos went national. Famed sportscaster Howard Cosell started using nacho as an adjective.
Did you see that run? That was a nacho run.
Come to think of it, I don't know what that means. Unless it means that the run was really delicious.
Even if your team is losing, a plate of hot nachos can make you feel like a winner.
What? You gotta be kidding me.
See? We've established that while tailgating today may get a little crazy, it's morally miles ahead of a picnic on the battlefield. That baseball without hot dogs was the absolute worst. And that nachos owe their success to a little savvy salesmanship and a lot of that special sauce. No meal is complete without a spoonful of fact and a dash of fiction.